public outcry for people who want a better planet.
And there are powers that be that let the people panic.
Look at the Gulf of Japan, could they have really planned it? Heading for the iceberg like the Titanic.
Atlantic mystery, Atlantis white from history. The truth about the pyramids in ancient Mayan prophecy.
Space Odyssey, look into the anomalies, and you will find suppression of free energy technology. A false democracy born out of a monopoly. Sacred knowledge robbery like the towers they topple.
Oh my word, I'll tell you what, this has been quite an interesting week for me personally. Besides growing webs between my toes to deal with all the rain here in western Washington, you know, the energy has been absolutely crazy. We did that, the last week's show was with that 5D panel, and that energy was quite spectacular. Oh, let's see, Ramon, have you put anything up on the website here lately? Oh, this is the 100th Monkey Radio, by the way.
In case you didn't know that.
Yeah, in case you didn't. You did happen to click on this, so I guess you probably do know.
No, I didn't have a chance this week to put anything except for a funny pic for Halloween. So I don't know where this decoration was at, but someone decorated the front of the yard. As soon as you go to the homepage, you'll see it, a crashed UFO with a gray, and then you see it like caution taped off, and it's really hilarious.
That's cool.
So what are you for Halloween this year, Ramon? Are you dressing up?
I wore the same thing that I did last year, the gray face mask that I have.
Oh, you were an alien.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course.
But, you know, before, I didn't get to put any news on, so I apologize, but I got to see something amazing, and I really would like to get our guests feedback on this once we bring them in. But yesterday, I think there were either swallows or one of those small birds, and there were like hundreds of them flying, and I felt like I noticed something in the pattern of the way they're flying, because they would fly like straight, and it looks like a wave, and then the wave would come in like a circle, and then it looked like they were going to crash into each other, but then they were uniform, and the birds, you know, some birds would move a little back, other birds would move a little up or down and come in, or they would come straight at each other and then turn at the last minute and all uniform. And I was thinking, in order for humans to do something like that, the amount of practice we would have to do would take hours and even years for that many people to do something like that, even just walking. So what I was getting the feeling was that I'm wondering if that's the way you know, like some kind of magnetic force, is that the way that the energy, the magnets, what's the word? Like the way the magnetic field is working that way. And then when you have other birds that fly very high, then they're doing a similar dance, but a little different. So I was picturing in my mind if the way the different magnetic fields, you know, you got the very high altitude ones and then lower, and how they react. So if you ever watch like a flock of birds, you know, take a look at it. But I was just amazed by that. Yeah,
there's our magnetic field's been going crazy. We're probably getting hit right now during this recording, or should be getting hit very soon with a CME that just went off the other day. So the sun's been actually going pretty crazy. So our magnetic field is taking a battering.
You know, when you talk about those birds just about crashing into each other, but in the end, they just coalesce and without even thinking, just naturally realign themselves into a new pattern, makes me think of what might happen. You see these photographs of these galaxies that are colliding into each other, and you think, man, what would it be like to be on one of those planets? Incoming sun, 12 o'clock. You know, and yet, if you were on that scale, in that environment, it would probably be close to the birds just merging. You wouldn't have stuff smashing into each other. You might have a solar system that has two now has three, or two now has one. One goes one way, one goes another way. And obviously there would be some disruptions, but probably not nearly as bad as what we think.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, I want to go on a bit of a tangent here since you guys started it.
It's your fault. It's your fault.
Before you do, you should probably say who you
This
are.
is we have Mark Hoza and Sterling Allan with us tonight. Welcome to the show. And you may continue.
Yeah, I'm the free energy man, but we're on a tangent tonight for at least to start out with. Excuse me. I was, a few years back when NASA posted those photographs they trained their Hubble telescope on a spot of the sky that if you held a grain of sand at arm's length, that would be basically the area of the sky that they were looking at. They did like 600 consecutive exposures, and they computer combined them into one image. And this is over, many hours of time, if not days. I can't remember how long of the time that they looked at the spot. And it was a spot that before basically showed nothing. It was a blank spot of the sky. And when they developed this image, it was a page full of galaxies. And the caption was "Worlds Without End." And you see one galaxy oriented one way, one another way. You've all seen that, images or images like it. And as I was looking at this with a friend, and I said, wouldn't that be funny if what that actually was were molecules in the back of a dog's tail that's sitting there wagging on a completely different dimension, and that what we consider to be our frame of reference, our universe, is actually a minuscule pinprick of an atomic structure on some massive other scale. And of course you could always go forward and backwards in terms of higher, lower. You do the same thing on if you were to look at an atom in our body that is flying around as faster than we can even imagine, 10 to the 16th vibrations per second. And yet, if you slow things down really slow, maybe those are like galaxies for some other dimension. Just something to think about.
Yeah. That's I look at infinity, and for infinity to be a true phenomena, it has to go both directions. So infinitely larger and infinitely smaller. You can cut something in half continually through infinity. You can always cut something in half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's fun about that is during that period of time I was doing a word number study. I discovered a code called alphabetics in the numerical sequence of words in the Old Testament and New Testament lexicon. So you take all the words of the Bible in Strong's Concordance and he numbers them so that you don't have to know the language to look them up. You can look up the word for love and its word number, 4-2, whatever it is. You can look it up numerically. Well, it turns out that those numbers correlate to modern phone numbers, zip codes, addresses, birthdays. It's crazy how applicable they are. And it has to do with, back to this bird thing, this resonance, this harmonics, being in harmony with certain frequencies and certain principles. Anyway, I was looking up the word, I came across the word for heaven, and the word right before, really quick before I tell you the punchline. Another thing I found in this alphabetics phenomena is that words in vicinity of each other have to do with each other. They're like related. And you can actually see storylines in an alphabetical sequence of words in the New Testament, Old Testament, and even English dictionaries. And so alphabetic vicinity has to do with each other, it's correlated, it's commentary. So I looked up the word for heaven, and the word right next to it was tail. Remember what I'd said about wouldn't that be funny if what we're looking at with the galaxies was a dog wagging its tail? And I just pulled that out of nowhere, and then I looked up the word for heaven, and the word right next to it was tail. Go figure. Huh?
Nice.
Wow. You're saying that, and I'm wondering if the way those birds move is exactly the way the galaxies move. And the way Adam moves are the same way as birds, because you always hear as above, so below. So, and they're always looking for like the theory of everything. So I'm just wondering,
Well,
because it's such an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah, Rudolf Steiner talks about that with like a flock of birds or ants that the reason they can, like ants can sense that there's food a really long distance away it's because the actual eye being of the ants is above, not in each ant, but above the ant, the group of ants, and so it just guides some of them over to where the food is. And to us on this level, it looks like we're trying to figure out there's some mechanism there in the senses, in the five senses, but that made a lot of sense to me. I've been living with that for quite a few years, and it really seems like that makes sense. Same thing with the birds flying or the fish swimming, that their eye being is different than ours. We're very uncoordinated, whereas they're extremely coordinated because it's like us controlling our hand and our fingers. Each fish is an aspect of the eye-ness that's not in each fish. It's above the fish.
That same lady I was having that conversation with about worlds without end, the galaxies, she's the one that actually got me believing in reincarnation and multiple mortalities, that we don't just have one shot at Earth life. We have many, 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 probably at least 1,000 times as a human, and before that we were animals, before that, plants, insects, minerals, etc. And she said that you would have like a group that it's not like one tree has one spirit per tree, one spirit per blade of grass, but that, like you were saying with the anthill, that they maybe had like a group intelligence that kind of guided the whole aggregate.
Yeah, like their eye-ness is not in the individual ant. It's almost like when an individual ant, it's like a fingernail, more of it's a different experience than our experience, which is, we're very densified in our eye being. We're quite trapped in our own individual thing, which some believe. I happen to feel like it's just like a temporary condition that we gain something from that awareness, that level of consciousness, and then we start working towards working back out of that densification again.
It could be too that our next level of evolution as a society is out of individual existence and into a group, collective, not in a socialist sense, but in a consciousness sense, that we actually combine and work together as a group. Because if you think about it, I mean, where we are right now, if you go to a bunker mentality of getting ready for everything that's coming down, all the crazy stuff that's happening, the New World Order's crashing the planet and trying to turn us all into slaves. Meanwhile, one response would be to go build a bomb shelter and hunker down and be able to live all by yourself without any support. But I don't think that's the right direction. I think we're intended to work together as people. To one guy's good at fixing tires, one guy's good at repairing your computer. I don't think we're supposed to go back to caveman days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think there is that that there is that unity consciousness that's already in place, that unity consciousness, but we just don't have. Well, some people do claim to have very very good connection with that. And I, at times, have connected with it in one form or another myself. So I have a distinct sense that there's something there that binds us all together on another level.
Doesn't it seem to you guys that, like, I have this really strong repulsion to the whole Borg sort of group consciousness, that I think that is being tried to put on us by mind control and different things that happen, that there is a push towards a technological sort of Borg mind, hive mind, and it seems that it's for us to, with our free will, work together, but each as individuals with an ability to communicate telepathically and work together on a very high level, fluidly communicating well, and but each having our own individual strengths. It does seem that it's important that we have an individuality and a personality, but then that we move to an ability to work together without having to be part of a hive.
It would make sense for everything. There's an opposition throughout time, throughout levels of development, from lowest to highest. And as we move to a higher level of evolution as a society, there would be counterfeits, the yin-yang opposition, so to speak, to the principle that we're talking about, the Borg that you're talking about, this computerized, mechanistic, computer automatron, where the computers take over and humans become subservient to the beast. That may be the direction that the powers that be want to take us in, whereas the direction that we're headed is much more supreme than that, much more enlightened, much more individuals choosing to be part of a collective as opposed to being forced to become part of as a slave into some computer automatron situation.
Exactly. And I think that's that's what the 100th Monkey's all about. I think that there's that certain level of consciousness that grows within us, and once we reach that critical mass, and I think it's well, I don't even know if it's a critical mass anymore. I think that the way energy works, even the energy that each and every one of us carries around in our souls, as we make our way in this world, the energy that we put out, we project it on the environment around us, and it absorbs some of that energy, and likewise we absorb the energy of those we interact with, and eventually that all comes to a balance on one level where it will that unity will happen. I mean, it's just a matter of spreading that consciousness throughout the planet. I don't know.
And I would argue, along those lines of the 100th Monkey and the group consciousness, that one of the reasons we don't yet have free energy devices on the marketplace, so to speak, is because we're not quite ready yet. We haven't manifested yet. But it's also, at the same time, it's one of the reasons why, even though we don't have them on the shelves yet, there are a whole bunch of modalities of free energy technologies, as many as there are conventional modalities, that are just on the verge of coming forward. We're not talking just one, we're talking a bunch of them.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. It's a huge, there's a real big group of them.
Yeah. So just like solar is, you could consider solar a genre, and look at all the different variations of solar that there are. Cold fusion is a genre. Magnet motors, another genre. Zero-point energy, another genre. There are as many genres of the exotic technologies that are going to be cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable, better almost on every count than the conventional ones that we have now, which are kind of allowed to come forth by the powers that be because they're only incremental in their, they don't make us independent from the powers that be, so that we have these individual cells that can be part of a larger thing by choice rather than by force. So it's interesting to tie all this stuff together. I'm glad you started with the bird story.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, you know what that makes me think? Something you said, Mark, that makes a lot of sense. So, for example, I'm sure you guys run into this all the time where you have different people coming up with the same inventions and their worlds, on the other side of the world from each other, yet they're putting in the patent at the same time. So if our society, and I'm speaking the entire planet, has like an eye above, like you were saying with the ants and the birds, then that would make sense why we're coming up with the same ideas and the same thing in different parts of the world.
A really good example of that is number 3 in our top 5. It's a self-loop motor generator system that conventional physics would just absolutely have a hard time with, because you have a small motor, for example, 1.5 horsepower motor, turning a 7.5 horsepower generator, full power, that loops back to keep the motor running and produces 5.5 kilowatts of power left over for practical use. Classical physics would say, no way, that's lifting yourself up by your own bootstraps, that's impossible. But what's happening apparently is there's a phase angle resonance issue that goes on between the motor and the generator that creates some beating and some harmonics that brings in externally from the environment some kind of external force, some electromagnetic thing that we don't fully understand yet, manifests itself to power and drive that generator, so that the motor is basically just a catalyst, not the prime mover. Wow. And so you have this system. I found out about this one a month ago, and the guy that was telling me about it was showing me videos of the thing running. He said they ran it 50 hours continuous without stopping before the belt started smoking, and they had some engineering issues they're going to have to address before they go commercial with this. The next morning, talking about 100th Monkey, the next morning, this is less than 24 hours after talking to this guy, I had an email in my inbox telling me about a company in Spain that has one of these things on their website. Go to Technocontrol, where control is spelled with a K. Technocontrol.com is a fire suppression company, and they've got this Techno 5000, I think they call it, generator. Does the same thing, small motor turning a big generator, powering stuff, looped back to keep itself running, and their description. This is a mainstream company. When I say mainstream, it's just an established company. They've got lots of products, over 50 products on this product page, and they say that this is a self-loop generator that doesn't have to have any fuel requirement. It's the same thing. And then I started thinking, this is the same thing that Ismail Avizo's doing. This is the same thing that Steven Spisak was claiming he was doing. I compiled a list of these self-loop motor generator systems, and then a couple of weeks later I found out about another one over in Indonesia. The guy's willing to open source. It's like it's time. These things are lining up. That page is, rather than focusing on one technology, is focusing on a whole bunch of people developing the same idea.
You know what I'm finding the more I look into these technologies, especially when I listen to your different shows, is that even when we do a completely different show that has nothing to do with energy, is I'm finding that everything you're saying, even though you're talking about technology, applies to spirituality, applies to, music, applies to all these different things, because here you're talking about the way harmonics and things working together, and it's like, wait, that's exactly what so-and-so is saying about, our human being. So it really seems like everything is coming together, like every aspect, because we're so divided with every single thing. Our brain's divided between left and right. We're divided by race. We're divided by nations. It's just amazing.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found is that when you wake up to one thing, it's usually one thing that gets your attention. You go, that's not right. There's something out of kilter there. You study it, you wake up, and there's this cognitive dissonance that you have to work through, because it's so hard to believe that something like this could be true, yet there's all the evidence. And when you realize that was true, then you start looking around saying, I wonder what else I've been told is wrong that I've been told is right. And you almost have to start from scratch, and the whole waking up process is not an easy thing to do. Because you have to basically revisit everything. You have to revisit health, education, politics, religion. I mean, if there's a sacred cow, religion, this is like people either their salvation, their heaven or hell. This is, and when you start hitting some sacred cows, and it's like, oh my goodness. But it's so liberating to take ownership for yourself and to take responsibility for your own paradigm, and stop looking to somebody else to tell you what medicines to take, what classes to take, what energy to buy, and you start thinking, you start realizing that this is something I can choose for myself, and there are a lot of better choices out there than what I'm being fed by the mainstream. Exactly.
So what else is out there right now as in the energy stuff? Not only the exotic stuff, but what is out there that really is making sense right now?
Well, what I focus on is the exotic, because there's several reasons for that. Part of it is that I see it as being tied into the new consciousness that's coming. Everything about exotic free energy is empowering. It takes a person and takes them out of a dependency and turns them into an independent agent so that they can be empowered to not only have cheaper energy, but to be able to start thinking, I really don't like working for this 9-to-5 job. I hate my job. I want to do something that I love. What is it that I'm really good at? And when they're no longer tied to having to earn a living, they can start thinking about what it is they're really good at. Their God-given talent, the thing that they were born to do, the thing that they are uniquely talented at doing that no one else can do like they can. And they can start pursuing that. And when a person does that, they're 6 times more productive than when they do what they hate.
Right.
And so...
Here.
Yeah, so by focusing on the exotic free energy technologies, I do get a little bit out of touch as to what's available right now. What can I put on my house right now to get off the grid? Well, we all know the answer to that. You have solar, wind, geothermal. There's these. You don't have to search very far to find a local vendor for these products and somebody who's installing them locally. There's plenty of attention being from the mainstream to those solutions that are already available. The exotics, though, we're talking about things that are not only going to be clean, but are going to be affordable, that will be cheaper than what you're paying from the grid. Like that motor generator thing I was just telling you about. That's a few $100s worth of stuff that you can buy off the shelf.
Wow.
And it's, 5 kilowatts, power your house with it.
Wow.
So many of these guys that are just doing this stuff in their garage, too. I mean, they're coming up with these ideas in their garage. I know that out of your top 5, there's 4 out of the top 5 are associated with businesses. Is that correct? Or all of them?
Well, I would say all of them started in a garage, but I would say that 4 of the 5 have companies wrapped around them. In process of taking it to market. They're working on, getting the engineering for manufacturing. It's a long process to take something to market. You just getting something working is not the end that you want. You've got to be able to engineer it so that you can mass produce it, so that you have the right components fitting together under mass production scenarios. You have to get the licensing and the approvals and the testing to make sure that it's going to hold up under customer situations and the vibration and the hot and the cold and the altitudes and all the different environments that they're going to be subjected to out in the marketplace. It's not an easy process. And so just saying that they're going to market is not saying that you're going to be able to buy these things next month. There's a lot of variables that enter in that can make something that looks like it's maybe 6 months now end up being a month or a year and a half instead of 6 months. And some things that look like they should take longer could go shorter. But it goes back to the 100th monkey thing. When we as a society are ready for this stuff, it'll show up. Mm-hmm. It'll be there, and not just one of them. It'll be a whole bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So should we go through the top 10 like order by order, or do you want to jump around from different ones?
Well, since we're being so organized in this presentation.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio Show.
Yeah.
We are professionals.
Oh,
in case you didn't know.
Well, I actually prefer this kind of format. It's a lot funner.
We do have a pretty good time doing it, I think, don't we, Ramon?
Yeah. Like you said, if you're not doing what you enjoy, then, my philosophy is why even bother with it?
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued looking at the top 5 list here that I'm staring at right now. The number 1 is confidential. Can we sneak anything out of that?
Yeah, I could say a little bit about that one. Just for your audience, a shortcut to this top 5 is top5energy.com. Both the spelling and the number will take you. We own both. and it forwards you to our PEZ Wiki page where we've got the top 5 and runners-up listed of these exotic free energy technologies that are close to market. And number 1 is going to be the closest, making the biggest difference, cheapest, etc. So the criteria of why something gets into the top 5 is that it's clean, affordable, and it's going to be available soon, if not already poking its head out in some way. So number 1 is in Europe. It's in the UK. And this is a technology that I have seen several prototype iterations of a core principle that is so flippin' simple that when it comes out, the first response is going to be denial. That's impossible. The second response will be, I wish I would have thought of that first. Because it's like, man, that is so easy. And of course, part of the problem with this, and one of the reasons that the inventor is very strict about the confidentiality, is if you go and you take a look at his prototype, you know how to build one. This is not rocket science. And so he's had a number of people that have shown up over the years, in the last, couple of years in particular, who have not done him good in terms of, following through with their commitments and being trustworthy like they thought they were going to be. And so he's running a bit paranoid right now in terms of who he lets in and trusts. I've been fortunate enough to be in there, help him take measurements, even help him build some stuff and come up with ideas about the next iteration. But right now, as we speak, he's got 7 iterations of the same principle. And let me tell you about one of them, okay? This is not one that's available for license or for potential open sourcing. It's an advanced version that is not the best iteration. And you're going to wonder, you're going to scratch your head why it's not, because this is going to be better than just about anything you've ever heard. But it's not. I'm confident as well that there are better manifestations of this particular technology.
Just for our audience and myself, I don't know what iteration means, even though I'm an English teacher.
Okay. Iteration is a manifestation or a version.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Like reiterate is to do it over again. So it's like an incarnation of a technology.
Yeah, version would be a good one, huh?
Right. Version would be a better, maybe a more colloquial way to say that. I'm glad you said that, because I use iteration all the time thinking everyone knows that word. Now I'm going to be a little more careful. Use version instead of iteration.
I'll
Anyway,
use that in my class today.
Yeah,
Sorry.
word for the day, class.
iteration is to machines what reincarnation is to right?
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Just cannibalize the previous one. Take this, take that. This is good. Put it into another version with a little twist this time around. That's actually a good analogy for reincarnation.
There you go.
Yeah.
So,
What am I going to try this time?
in this incarnation that I saw of this device, you've got a motor that is spinning this thing up. It's a force multiplier system, okay? And on the back end, you've got a generator. And the motor is not that strong, and it's not capable of spinning the generator high enough to produce any electricity, because the generator wants to be at least like 2100 RPMs to start cranking out any watts, okay? And it wants to be at 3000 RPMs to produce its clean sine wave, 60 hertz or 50 hertz, I guess, there in the UK. So what between the motor and the output generator is a apparatus, we'll just call it an apparatus, that holds these force multiplier systems. And without any force multiplier systems in the apparatus, just spinning, so you would call this a control, with 0 force multipliers, you get 0 electricity out. Okay? Now, when you put 2 force multipliers units into the system, that we can't say how they work, but they go into the system. This is something I witnessed, that generator spins up to 1,250 watts. Okay? Now, this is not accurate measurement because the watt meter that we're using to measure it wants to be at 3,000 RPMs. But it's producing energy. It's running a heater. It's running a light. It's producing load. It's running a load. It's not, full power, not full heat, not full light, but it is turning the things on, okay, producing electricity. When you double that, when you put 4 of the force multiplier units on the system, it goes up to 2,000 watts. Now, anything that conventional science knows today, if you add things to a rotating system, you don't increase the output, okay? You decrease it because you're adding friction, you're adding, weight. There is something called, you can get a principle called kinetic motion that can help you, maybe get over the hump on a generator like this that could be showing up maybe with the 2. But the thing is, these things do not have a kinetic energy property. When you turn off the input energy, the thing spins down almost instantaneous, and yet it's easy to spin with your hand, okay? That's what I witnessed. So again, 0 force multiplier systems, 0 watts out. 2 force multiplier systems, 1,250 watts out. 4 force multiplier systems, 2,000 watts out. Almost doubling. So that's one of the demonstrations that I saw of the technology. I documented it. I took recordings. I took video, confidential. So that is an advanced version of the technology, and that iteration, like I said, is not even the best version of it. There's going to be a version that he's putting into a new configuration that will move us possibly into the space age. So that is number one. And this is a technology that I talked him into signing a contract to open source if we do 2 things. Number one, we have to bring 2 licensees to the table for the advanced stuff, okay? And then once we do that, we can open it up to crowdfunding. And if we can raise a minimal amount of money so that he can buy a laboratory, get a laboratory so that he doesn't have, right now he's farming stuff out. If he wants something built, he has to go to a local machine shop. It takes him 5 weeks to do what he could do in 3 days if he had all the equipment. He's run a machine shop before. And so he wants £500,000 to build a machine shop. I know that's a lot of money, and that's going to be hard to raise that much. But if we bring the 2 licensees to the table, then we get a 25% of the amount that we raise from the licensees goes toward the open source thing. So we could bring it down by as much as £250,000. And so it'd be only £250,000 toward his machine shop, and then he will let us open source it. And we have 80 days to raise that money. This Build a Goddamn Tesla Museum fundraiser thing, they raised $1 million in 1 week. So I think our audience is capable of it. If we get the right hype behind it and the right understanding behind it, we could push this, then we could get this thing open source. And then what could happen is that every town on the planet, including in Africa, has somebody smart enough with enough resources of stuff, being able to pull things together, cobble things together, that they could build one of these things from stuff that's available locally, and then they could start making them for their friends, and then going into business making these things. You could create jobs in addition to making cheap energy. You could also basically overnight, we could put an end run on the powers that be attempt to derail the economics of the world. They're trying to bring us into an economic spiral, a flushing the toilet of our world economy, so that they can come out as the powers that be, that basically we're slaves to their system. That's what they're trying to pull off. And if we can get these energy technologies, this one or any of the other ones, or even the ones that we don't know about, these free energy technologies that come out, that can make an end run around their plan to crash the world economy, because now people have hope. They have an ability to create jobs. They have cheap energy. And one of the things that's driving up prices is the price of fuel.
Right.
Price of fuel drives up the price of crops, etc. And also, some of the depression is the word that is used for the economic state where people basically are not able to earn enough, etc. And depression is not only an economic paradigm, it is also a spiritual paradigm. People get into a depressed mode. It's a vicious cycle, a negative feedback loop. They don't earn enough money, so they get in a bad mood. They're in a bad mood, so they can't earn as much money because they're not as effective. So because they don't earn very much money, they get in a worse mood, and it goes down and down and down. If they could have hope replace depression, then that negative feedback loop reverses and it goes in a positive direction. And I believe that a collective depressed attitude of people shows up in the weather. That the droughts that we're seeing outside of the weather engineering that's going on by the corrupt powers that be, I do believe that there is such a thing that people can basically steer the weather by their attitudes. And you can make a historic case of historically during the Depression they had the Dust Bowl because of the droughts, because of the Depression, that there's a relationship between that attitude and that physical manifestation. So if we can get people out of depression, we can end these droughts that we're in, we can end the food crunches that we're in, we can turn things around from the powers that be trying to crash civilization, we can prevent us hitting the wall, and we can wake up before we hit the wall. Because if we hit the wall as a society, it's going to take a good decade to dig out. Whereas if we can wake up and we don't destroy our infrastructure, then we could go into this wonderful Jetson type of cool society very rapidly. But we've got to have a spiritual transformation to get there. That we've got to wake up to get to where we need to go. That wake up is a crucial element, and that 100th monkey thing that you guys are about is all about waking up. It's all about getting people's consciousness to see, wake up and smell the coffee so that they can adopt these new ways of thinking, so that we can not hit the wall. Because I personally like warm showers. I don't want to go into a Mad Max world. And if we had a raise of hand, I don't think anyone here would agree that we would like to go to a Mad Max world before we wake up.
Right. You know, and
Agreed.
There's the double-edged sword of all the crap that's going on is that a lot of this trauma and crap that the world is going through is the catalyst for waking people up. You know, people, if everything's going fine in their lives and they don't have, they're making plenty of money, they got the car, they mow their lawn to be just as good as the Jones next door, they're fine. They watch their TV shows, blah, 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 blah. They're just existing on a level plane. Nothing pushes them out of that to do anything different. The trauma that's happening on the planet right now is making people ask questions, making people think, and that is the double-edged sword. It's ugly, it's nasty. There's a lot of crap going on, but on the other side of that crap is the catalyst for so many people. That proverbial 2x4 upside the head, Ramon, so that are making people wake up.
I agree, and what I would argue that what we see now is nothing compared to how bad things can get if we don't wake up.
I will agree with that.
Yeah, I think you made some really good points, especially in the beginning of the show when you were talking about how one thing is related to another. And for me personally, I think these free energies, once that comes out, people start questioning it, especially like, how does that work? Wait, we were told that was impossible. Well, what else we were told was impossible that's actually possible? Like, if the machine can do that, then, or the other one would be, if it's not a free energy technology, then it'll be the quantum computer. so that's why I feel like that would start making people question all aspects of their life.
Right, when they see something come forward that mainstream said was impossible and they pooh-poohed and marginalized, they're going to be so pissed off at the mainstream press for not giving any coverage of this when it's been percolating for decades. A lot of this stuff has been. They're going to say, why didn't you tell us about this? You know, this Andrew Rossi thing, this cold fusion technology, they were sending you all these press releases. You never gave it any coverage. Why not? This stuff is making all the difference in the world. This is making energy affordable. This is making our nuclear power plants unnecessary. We can retrofit these plants from these polluting nuclear sources to this clean cold fusion process that has no radioactivity involved whatsoever and has no meltdown capability, and is clean and affordable energy. We could have been doing this 2 decades ago if you guys had not marginalized this and called it junk science. And there's going to be a raising of pitchforks and running people out on a rail and kind of a revolution of, you know, we're fed up with the mainstream prostitutes that are telling us one thing.
I like that.
You prostitute.
Yeah, that's Gerald Salente's term.
You know what's funny? I think it was either after you were on Coast to Coast or before. I can't remember. And I was a little upset at George for not saying anything about it. I know he was being like, he always tries to be non-biased, but he had this NASA scientist on, and someone mentioned about, you know, cold fusion caught up, and he says, oh, you know, that was disproved back in the 1980s, so we know there's nothing there. And I was just like, oh my God, what are you talking about? You know, this guy has a working model that, you know.
Not just one guy, there's like 12 groups going commercial with this that are in various stages of commercializing cold fusion on the kilowatt.
There are 2 more that I know of that are not. I haven't been talking about because there are people who don't want to be known publicly yet, and I'm sure you've got others as well, Stu. There are quite a few working on that.
Yeah, there are. Of our top 10, and then there's runners up even behind that, I think 4 or 5 of them are cold fusion.
So where's Rossi at with his? Because I heard rumors that Home Depot wanted to pick it up, and then, you know, so where's that at right now?
Rossi is number 2 in our top 5, and where he's at is he's making some huge strides in what's called a hot cat, because the ECAT, which stands for energy catalyzer, it happens at around, they don't get above 200, 300 degrees Celsius, which isn't really that useful from an energy generation point of view. From a heat point of view, yeah, you can heat your hot water at home, heat your home, you know, it could be used for that. But from an electricity point of view, you need to get up at least 600 degrees Celsius to be able to turn things efficiently, turbines, thermoelectric converters, Stirling engines, things like that. And now with the hot cat, he's up to 1,000 degrees Celsius, and he's had units running continuously for several months now, and he's getting these things certified and tested, and he's got one right now that's based on the ECAT that is a 1 megawatt system that you can buy. If you have $1.5 million, you can plunk down your money and stand in line. And the first one publicly, the first customer is a military customer that can't be disclosed or shown publicly. But there's an Italian customer that is supposed to be done and installed fairly soon in a few weeks in northern Italy, where you'll be able to go and see one of these things in operation and plunk down your money, get one yourself. 1 megawatt, by the way, is as much power as a small locomotive. Wow. And he's got these things running right now. He's got there's one in Bologna that is a unit that is of that ilk. And I'm not sure how many he has built at this point because he's not really forthcoming with that information. But I do know that you can buy them. You can put money down and get in queue. I think delivery time is said to be 3 to 6 months to get one of these things. And so technically he's in the market, and that's why he's up there near the top. The reason I've got the number one ahead of him, the one we were just mentioning, is because it's going to be able to impact a larger number of people in a shorter period of time at a lower price point, producing electricity, which is the primary energy source that we use in our today's society. Our gadgets, our cars, electricity is a very useful form of energy. And this can be very practical in making electricity, whereas Andrew Rossi's electricity is, 6 to 18 months away.
Yeah. So 1 megawatt is like 20, 30 houses? Somewhere in there?
No, it's going to be a lot more than that because one house it depends on how you're computing this. Your average use is 5% of your peak usage. And so if you want a house that's run off grid, you have to plan for peak. And so that's when your air conditioner's running, the washer, dryer, etc. Your peak is going to be, so let's say your average is 5%, and that means, 500 watts. That means your peak is 20 kilowatts, right?
Okay.
And so you have a choice. If you want to get battery system and get inverters and whatnot, which is very expensive. It's by far the most expensive portion of a solar system. The panels are very cheap nowadays. The racking is more expensive than the panels to, put the mounting of the panels up on your roof. So what I was starting to say is that with the price of the I derailed my train of thought there.
We were talking about the ECAT, and I was guessing at how many houses a 1 megawatt runs.
Oh yeah, you were talking about how what the alternatives are for if you've got your normal load and then you've got your peak load, and so the one way you were talking about battery storage and inverters versus your different alternatives for where you go with that.
How many houses could 1 megawatt power? Around 500. Okay. That's if you don't have to have the battery backup and you're not taking into account the peak usage that you're hitting average. Okay.
Right.
Because that's computing 2,000 watts per home. 2 kilowatts per home. Being the average, and that's a very generous number. That's very conservative, meaning that the average home might be more like 1 kilowatt. Right. So if the average house was 1 kilowatt, then you would be powering 1,000 houses with 1 megawatt. Right?
Wow. So here's a question with that I know they're gonna try to use that in order to stop it. What are any dangers you looked with this? Like even at the most stupidest level, like some stupid person wants to, drive into it. Let's just, any dangers, because I feel like they're gonna try to use any excuse to hold it back, and they're gonna make it sound like the devil. So I'm just curious if there's any real dangers.
Actually, it is quite safe, but when you have a boiler system, the dangerous stuff is going to be your boiler, not the energy source that's making the hot water. It's going to be the pressurized system that has to be able to pass certifications. And when you got something in a home and you got drunken adults, you have the threshold for home safety is much higher than it is for industry. They actually have their safety certifications for the 1 megawatt plant. And so that would happen last September. And so it's basically full green light, ready to go, ready to install. And
And these are $1.5 million?
$1.5 million for a megawatt system.
So community project right there.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, for you guys out there that have, live in a strong community, you can just go to fundme.com and, I've heard a lot of stories of people, putting their monies together to do many different things. So.
That's pretty interesting. That I was picturing a lot less houses on 1 megawatt, but that's pretty impressive. That's something that a community, especially if it's a relatively tight-knit community, could say, hey, let's have our community meeting, and this would be impressive to see some people do this.
Yeah, there's a guy down in Hawaii who wants to power, get Hawaii powered from renewable sources, and I think he's probably going to buy one, starting with the local community he's got going there.
So what kind of fuel this used? A nickel base, is that correct?
Nickel and hydrogen, two of the most replete and abundant and cheap elements available on the planet right now. Neither of them are radioactive. And cold fusion is probably not the right terminology, because you don't have fusion going on, you have transmutation is the most likely scientific explanation of what's going on. So the hydrogen's going to deuterium, the nickel is a catalyst, and the nickel on a rare occasion is going to copper through a series of transmutations. You're not taking nickel and combining it with hydrogen to make copper. That's not what's going on. The hydrogen is transmuting to deuterium, which is non-radioactive. It's replete in the oceans of the Earth, and that creates most of your energy. And then some of the energy is coming from the nickel going to copper.
Wait, so you're telling me that what's being left? First of all, you're saying alchemy. Am I correct in saying that? Is that?
Yeah, it is a form of alchemy, but it really, when you talk about nuclear science, there's a lot of stuff in nuclear science that is alchemy, and they're really hypocritical to wag their finger at quote unquote alchemist. It's the same thing as a heat pump. Every heat pump that's run on your refrigerator that takes takes warm air and turns it into cold is actually over unity by like 1.2, 1.5 times more energy out than what you put in, because it's harnessing the energy, the warm air from the environment, and is harnessing that and making the engine run more efficiently. And so that's an over unity system that pulls energy from the environment that is in every home on the planet that has a refrigerator.
Interesting.
So when the leftover, you can use the copper. Let's say you can use the copper and the because I've heard deuterium is very valuable.
Yeah. And another thing too, that because the deuterium's building up in the system, that's why they have to recharge it every 6 months, is because the deuterium is basically quenching the reaction. You get buildup of it too much, now you have to basically reboot, so to speak, and you have to put in a new cartridge of hydrogen and nickel. And understanding that may give them a way to make it run longer by somehow, I don't know if they could siphon out the deuterium in some way. But if let's say, for example, you got in a crash, is this thing going to melt down and blow up? No. Because basically, if it starts going too hot, it physically melts and the reaction stops. So it's self-limiting.
I'm just amazed at the stuff you're telling me, because I guess Mark was there. I'm going to ask you the same question in the same way I asked Patrick Flanagan. And Mark, I don't know if you remember the question. With everything you're saying, I think the number one question is, how can I get politicians to get their heads out their ass in order to see this? Because living here in Japan, and I apologize to those people who are offended by my foul mouth, but living here in Japan and constantly hearing, people like yourself and all these different people talk about these things that, and they're not looking into it. Like, is there any governments looking into this technology that you know of that you can speak about?
No governments that I know of. We have a statement on our website. Toyota's looking into it. They're involved in cold fusion research again. The saying on a website, he who is one step ahead is a genius. He who is 2 steps ahead is a crackpot. And then you add to that, he who is 1 step behind is a government.
That's about right, though.
Yes.
You do not look to the government to be leading this stuff in any way, shape, or form. You're going to be so frustrated and
it's quite reactive. Yeah, I think it's more reactive. Really, the people you're working with are people who are out there getting things, like just trying to solve the problems. It's interesting. It's similar. I've got this other a couple of people who are contacting me saying, "Oh, why isn't more done on this project that you're working on? It should have been done ages ago." And they look at it, and they just don't see the complexities of it, and they're just like in their armchair, like looking at things. Everything's so simple, and really it's where the work's being done is where people are really nutting out the fine details of difficult questions, and they're out there working. Like, it's not like there aren't people passionate and working. They are out there working. There are many people working on this stuff, and it's not in government. It's out there in the population.
Yeah, let me give you an example of that. I got a phone call about 2 months ago from a guy who was listening to our news. He's got 3 or 4 friends. They started comparing notes, and they came up with a cold fusion system that could basically be a battery application that could power your handhelds using cold fusion technology that they're working on doing the testing and whatnot. And these guys are, one of the guys has like 163 patents to his name. That's just one little anecdote. Anyway, I think, Mark, you were going to say something?
No, that's okay. I was just thinking, like, really, doesn't even factor in. To me, it seems the government's a reactive body. It really is. The whole mechanism, the whole setup of the way it works is reactive, and it kind of it needs to react and adapt, but it has a big lag time. And if we just get out there and create projects, and like I know the way I'm working seems to be making some difference, because there are people who want to invest. There are actually people out there who want to invest in clean energy technologies, and they want to see the world a better place. They want to leave a legacy. And then there are also people who have been working on things, and they need resources. The people with the money really need help because they don't know how to validate or invalidate what they're looking at. They need help from others who know how to validate. And so there's this sort of like there's a real need for people to work together, because some people are making claims that they can do things. I could name some names but I just won't, because it's there are some people who are out there really making a lot of they're very public and have a good public face. But I know the people who are trying to work with them, and they're actually not able to come up with the goods. But it isn't because the person coming with the funding isn't able to make something happen. It's because they weren't actually coming up with the goods. So you need somebody like Sterling. The value with Sterling, as I see it, is that Sterling's working really hard to validate or invalidate technologies, and so you need somebody sort of in the middle as somebody who can look at it and give an opinion that's got some merit, and then you go from there. So I'm really keen to. I'm always looking at what Sterling's finding out about different people, and that's why I was approaching him in the first place, is because I do have people who are looking around for ideas to support and to run with, it really is tricky to find out what is valid.
Right. So, well, I got to thank you, both of you guys, for all that you do. And Sterling, man, you are absolutely amazing with everything you've been digging into. And geez, I don't know how many websites that you're managing and promoting. And one of those websites is for funding, isn't that correct? To help to funnel some of these funds to some of these people working on technologies.
I don't know how you found out about that, but actually we were starting an initiative to do just that, to be a crowdfunding venue for all exotic free energy technologies, where people who want to do crowdfunding as a democratic way to raise funds rather than hand over half their company to an investor. They only need $10,000, and very often you'll see these investors give up the inventors give up 50% of control of their company for $10,000.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And that's all they need to get the really good prototype that they can get their next tranche of money going, and then by the time they just don't know what they're doing, they've given away all their shares. And we've got that website that's going to be coming out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We also just recently finished a document called Idea to Market. When I say we, I'm talking about the New Energy Systems Trust that I founded back on May 1st of this year as an answer to the May 1st communists. This is our May 1st solution, where we, the New Energy Systems Trust, came up with this document that basically it's an instructional document of what are all the different stages that an idea goes through to get from idea to the marketplace. You have to go through the funding, through the validation, through the business plan, through the, there's all these steps, and it helped people kind of know what they're up against, that it is not easy to get to market, and all the talent that needs to be brought to the table. And it also gives people an idea of how they can get involved in this sector and how they can help bring these technologies to market. Say, hey, I'm good at that. Maybe I can get my feet wet by helping the inventors on an if-come basis. I'll not charge anything up front. I'll write them a business plan, and then if they go successful, then I can get paid and get maybe a percentage of their company. Work out some kind of an arrangement. Just get some creativity going to help these inventors come out without having to go the traditional route, giving up so much of the control of the technology. Most financiers want to work around the inventor and patent around the inventor as quick as possible to get the inventor out of the equation, because they're crazy, lunatic, radical, eccentric personalities that are difficult to work with. And that's true. They are.
Well, we've reached the top of the hour. We're actually past the top of the hour, so we'll
Okay.
why don't you throw out your main websites there, Sterling, and we'll take ourselves a break and come back and continue chatting about this stuff. Good stuff.
FreeEnergyNews.com is the easiest to remember, and you can get linked to all the other stuff from there.
Fantastic. Well, once again, I want to thank you guys for everything that you're doing. And I want to thank everybody for listening. Some very interesting stuff. Maybe we're playing our part to help pull people's heads out of their asses, as Ramon likes to say.
Yeah. I just want to apologize because it just gets frustrating.
Is that the English teacher version of 100th Monkey Radio? What 100th Monkey is about?
Yeah. Exactly. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Don't forget to hit on the members tab for those of you who are members. When you help support us, you help bring shows like this so we can keep going. And the love you deny is the pain you carry.
Okay, we'll see you guys in the second hour.
And help your government pull their head out their ass.
There's a public outcry for people who want a better planet.
And there are powers that be that let the people panic.
Look at the Gulf of Japan, could they have really planned it? Heading for the iceberg like the Titanic.
Atlantic mystery, Atlantis white from history. The truth about the pyramids in ancient Mayan prophecy.
Space Odyssey, look into the anomalies, and you will find suppression of free energy technology. A false democracy born out of a monopoly. Sacred knowledge robbery, like the towers they toppling.
No stopping free.
Jade brain, needle C,
Coming from the inner me.
free energy. The oil's running dry, our money's burning out.
Solar panels on the roof of the White House.
Hey, we bringing on some real change.
Water catchment system.
We collecting rain.
Time to gather round, the moment's now. I want it all turn out, and from the crowd, be the one who's the meditation. It's time for freedom and time to freedom and
Nikola Tesla perceived the earth as a conductor of acoustical resonance, and still his presence lives in the heart of visionary invention. Over 5,000 patents censored. Researching zero-point energy, trying to get through delirium. The unified field theory of Nassim Harriman, and every day we carry in the burden of our past. Water fuel cars, we no longer need the gas.
So many solutions right here in your face. Raw earth energy, create what rejuvenates. Green walls and green roofs, grow plants on everything. Magnetic movements, don't need gas for anything. Spatially sprockets, doing our own research, paying out of pocket. Bike powered stages, you pedal in our rocket. Fully access to techie knowledge. Green power over big profit. You can't stop it.
everything for the wars are fought for, and the dream that the world could be more. I stand my life by earth, one chance we could do it together. Everything for the wars are fought for, and the dream that the world could be more. I stand my life by now, one day we could do it together. Oh, yeah.
The Renaissance, third industrial revolution. Invention is the language of a worldwide solution. The body electromagnetic, plasma arc reactor, stubble field, Kautsky frost. Free the knowledge lost. Some people wait for 2012 to watch the earth shift, but in New Mexico they out there building earth ships. We got the language wrong, I got a new twist. The lifting of the veil, that's the true apocalypse. Some see free energy as the enemy, but my genetic memory remembering that that could never be. Thoughts float in the anti-gravity. A cubic foot of space can fuel the whole world annually. You can choose to love or hate, revolt or maybe meditate. And every day we demonstrate so we can finally get it straight. Peace worldwide is the anthem that we celebrate. Free energy like the end of the movie Saint.
Time to gather round, the moment's